Good evening. Welcome tonight. It's good to have you all here. It's good to have Nathan here as well. He's the one doing the presentation, so it's good to have him. 372, looking forward to that presentation tonight, but 372 as we get started tonight. Let's go ahead and stand as we sing 372, Once for All. Free from the law, oh happy condition on the first. Free from the law, oh happy condition. Jesus hath bled, and there is remission. Cursed by the law, and bruised by the fall, grace hath redeemed us once for all. Once for all, oh sinner, receive it. Once for all, oh brother, believe it. Cling to the cross, the burden will fall. Christ hath redeemed us once for all. On the second, now are we free, there's no condemnation. Jesus provides a perfect salvation. Come unto me, oh hear a sweet call. Come and he saves us once for all. Once for all, oh sinner, receive it. Once for all, oh brother, believe it. Cling to the cross, the burden will fall. Christ hath redeemed us once for all. And the last, children of God, oh glorious calling. Surely his grace will keep us from falling. Passing from death to life at his call. Blessed salvation once for all. Once for all, oh sinner, receive it. Once for all, oh brother, believe it. Cling to the cross, the burden will fall. Christ hath redeemed us once for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Pastor.
We're going to go ahead and take some prayer requests this evening. And a couple of things to mention to you. Many of you said hi to my wife. She is here. She still has pretty good headache going on. So anyhow, you can pray for her. And then for Barbara's daughter, I believe it is, Michelle. She had back surgery several weeks ago, and she'd been over to pet her cat, and something gave in her back, and so she is going to be getting an MRI, I think, tomorrow. And so we'll pray for Michelle. Pray for Abby. And how is she doing? Okay. So pray for Abby. For those who don't know, Abby had all 4 wisdom teeth removed. I think that was Wednesday. And so pray for her in her recovery. Our daughter Ashley is doing well in her recovery. From that, pray for Dick. Pray for our daughter Whitney, if you would. Pray for Terry. Terry Mitchell, he is down with vertigo, and so he is home. Made it to Utah and back. Had a great visit up there with family, but pray for Terry. And about that. And then, is it this week, John, you have the fire drills out there? Is it this week? So out at Camp Navajo, they're going to be doing 2 fire drills. One is going to be a suppression drill, to where they're going to set it on fire and then suppress it, that's put it out. The other one's going to be a containment, or managing the fire. So they're going to be doing both of those drills this week. So just safety and just wisdom and how all that goes there, if you would pray for them. And then the musics leave on Wednesday. Audrey's going to college, and they're going to be going down a few days early, making a couple of visits down there and seeing some folks, but she is headed to college this week. So pray for her as she heads to college and makes this transition, and we'll be in prayer for her. What else can we pray with you about this evening? I don't have any prayer letters to read to anybody, so what can we pray with you about? Yes, ma'am? Okay. Okay. So pray for Michelle's salvation. She is going to have cancer surgery, and we'll pray for her. Anything else this evening? Yes, ma'am? right, so for those watching, so Heidi's friend Richard is a police officer, wife, 3 children, is that right? He's dealing with cancer, he's in his 30s, he's going through chemo, that will be, the chemo will do the trick on the cancer. And then for Heidi's grandmother's home, her estate, all of her belongings have been going to be transferred to an estate sale company, and they're going to make an estate sale to move the items along from her grandmother. And then also for, what's the last one? I'm sorry. Megan and Richard flying home from Spain. All right. All right. Anything else this evening? Anything else? Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. So, been having discussion with the school board and with the trustees about transitions, and so what the Lord would have for us. And so, if you'd pray with us about that, we would sure appreciate it. Anything else this evening?
Sister Carrie passed us. She had damage from one of her back surgeries that caused other issues she had. Sister Vest Friday, we prayed for her. She won't get the results till October.
Okay, all right. So ways to wait. Okay, so we'll pray for Carrie, just her ongoing issues, back procedure last week. Hopefully it will help with some of her pain issues and health. Anything else? No? Okay, let's go ahead and have another song, and then after that, the service will be turned over to Brother Nathan, and then we will have prayer time at the end of the presentation tonight. So let's go ahead and go to prayer. I'm sorry. Let's go to song.
376. He included me. I am so happy in Christ today that I go singing along my way. Yes, I'm so happy to know and say Jesus included me too. Jesus included me. Yes, he included me when the Lord said whosoever. He included me. Jesus included me. Yes, he included me when the Lord said whosoever. He included me on the third. Ever God's Spirit is saying, come, hear the bright saying, no longer roam. But I am sure while they're calling home, Jesus included me too. Jesus included me, yes, he included me. When the Lord said whosoever, he included me. Jesus included me, yes, he included me. When the Lord said whosoever, he included me. And on the last, freely come drink words the soul to thrill. Oh, with what joy they my heart do fill. For when he said whosoever will, Jesus included me too. Jesus included me, yes, he included me. When the Lord said whosoever, he included me. Jesus included me, yes, he included me. When the Lord said whosoever, he included me. Thank you, Brother Nathan.
Well, thank you for coming tonight. I've been excited to be able to present about my mission trip, and I know it's been a little bit and we've gotten home, but I scheduled a pastor this night before I left, and I was grateful for a little bit of time in between just to kind of get slides ready and all those kinds of things, but I'm excited to share with my trip, about my trip with you tonight, and I want to say thank you, first of all, for being here tonight, and also thank you for your giving and your prayers for this trip. The giving, I had some family and friends who gave from outside the church, but the large majority of the giving towards this trip came from this church, and so I really thank you for that, and I was able to use that to cover expenses as well as use some of that money to hopefully be a blessing to Melissa and her ministry as well. So I want to thank you for that, and Melissa has also sent her thanks as well, just appreciating sharing me, as she put it. She said, thank you. She said, tell the church thank you for letting me have you for a few weeks, and also just for the ways which we were able to help in her ministry as well. I did want to say before I go into the slides, a lot of times with missionary presentations, there's a lot of pictures of people. That's oftentimes what we think of because that is the point of the missions field, and I oddly don't have many. I say oddly. It might seem contrary to what we'd be used to, but something I learned while in Sweden is that privacy is huge. If we think privacy is important to us here in America, we have no idea compared to what it's like in Sweden, and so it was unusual for me to even get pictures of people. But so hopefully I can still share kind of the heart of the missions field and what Sweden is like and all that. And Melissa, in her letters, she usually just puts people's names as initials for us to pray. She'll say, please pray for E or whatever. And so I'm kind of going to refer to people as that tonight, largely just because of streaming or being more in the setting, but I'd be happy to share more specifics one-on-one. I think that would be fine. But just so you know why that is, it's very important to them to have their privacy and all those kinds of things. So this first slide is a picture of Jönköping, and I was able to get this picture from there's a park on a hillside on the west side of Jönköping that we were able to go to on second or third day visit there. Some of my days have begun running together, but we're able to go there, and just a really beautiful picture that I think really shows the city, and you can see the lake. Sweden is a country of more than 80,000 lakes. That was one of the things that was there was water everywhere, and as someone who has pretty much lived in Arizona just about all of my life, that was unusual to see lakes everywhere, flowers everywhere. But the biggest lake in the area, in the Smålands area of Sweden, sits just right north of Jönköping. Jönköping is kind of built right onto it, so there's that there. I wanted to talk about some of the goals of my mission trip. Make sure, okay, good. Just tell me if I start talking about the next thing and it didn't actually go. Somebody just be like, hey. First of all, I wanted to go to be an encouragement to Melissa with Family Company. This is honestly where my burden to go started, was last summer. Mom, Dad, and I were able to visit Melissa's parents, my aunt and uncle, and talking to my Aunt Cheryl, just hearing that there's not been much family that's been able to go. It is a really big trip, and there are other ways in which Melissa has Christian fellowship certainly, and nowadays with technology, FaceTiming and texting and all those things, she gets to do that a lot. But the first thing that really made me want to go was just for Melissa to have some family company. Obviously wanted to go see it myself, but I just was really thinking it would be nice for Melissa after so many years. And we've seen her recently. She was here 2 years ago-ish, a little more than that, something like 3 years ago almost now. So she does get to visit family, but it's not often compared to what many people experience. So that was my first goal. So being there, I think, fulfilled that. And then support Melissa's ministry with various projects. When I began talking with her about the possibility of going, she was like, oh, I'll start brainstorming some things you can help me with. And I was like, great. If I was able to just go and be with her and spend time company with her, I was going to be happy with that. But if there were ways I could help, then I was certainly ready and willing to. So we got to do some of those, and I'll share those in a little bit. And then also experience Sweden sites and culture for a better appreciation of family heritage and the mission field. Our family on Dad's side does come from Sweden. Not very many generations ago, my great-grandfather immigrated over from Sweden, and so just being able to see some of that family heritage was very special, and then also to be able to better picture Melissa's mission field. We read the letters and we hear from her, and sometimes it still is just like, it's hard to picture. You do your best to picture, but being there, I think I'll be able to better appreciate her letters and the things she shares, because I'll be able to picture faces and picture places and all of those kinds of things, and that is a big thing for sure. So the first few slides, I just put together some general scenery, some things that you can see, and so as I go through them, I'll just comment on certain things. The, let's see here, top right picture is a picture from part of a university area in a town called Grena. The bottom kind of flat picture is the main lake standing downtown Zhangshiping, kind of looking off towards the west, towards where that park was. Just different things I was able to see. I really enjoyed, I'll get to the Church of Sweden later. I enjoyed seeing the structures of the Church of Sweden. It was very beautiful, so getting pictures of those things was all pretty neat. Had to throw in some red and yellow buildings here. That was the most common thing we saw everywhere. These, the bright red and yellow were everywhere, and I loved it. They were really beautiful. The yellow building there, Melissa has actually, one of the things Melissa does just in getting to know people in ministry is she plays in the city band. And so they get hired out sometimes, or they'll play for like city events and stuff. And she plays the saxophone. And they played, I don't remember now, I heard a lot of band stories and I get them mixed up, but she played in that building for some kind of, I don't remember if it was a memorial service or dedication or like something like that. They were able to play in there, and we drove by that a lot, so one day I asked her to stop so I could get a picture. And some of the walks we took were just gorgeous, very, very green. The pictures don't seem very detailed because it's just full of green and everywhere, but really enjoyed that for sure. You can see there in the top right, kind of old town, downtown Zhangshiping. The largest, or I guess I don't know if it's largest, the picture kind of right in the center towards the bottom with the kind of the yellow and the green roof, that is a performing arts high school, which I texted my Jekyll and Hyde cast and I said, how'd you like to study here and perform our plays there? That'd be pretty neat. It was really cool to see a very large campus. We were able to go up on a little, they call it mountaintop. It's hard for me to call it a mountaintop being from here, but it's literally the mountain's top is how it translates into English, so I guess I have to call it that. The mountain's top looking over another town, I don't remember the name of it, I hate to say. That was really neat. We later actually had like a cafe and restaurant and walking areas and putt-putt up on top of there, and so Melissa and I played putt-putt on top of the mountain, so that was fun. Downtown Zhangshiping, all those things. More downtown Zhangshiping, beautiful waterfall that a couple of Melissa's neighbors, M and S, I'll call him, took us to one day. He travels, when he's not working, he'll take a long weekend or time he's off, and he travels all over Sweden doing photography. And so there was some waterfalls Melissa hadn't been to before, and they offered to take us out there one day, and that was really kind of them, and nice. He spoke English, and that was really nice. I spent a lot of time on this trip listening to a lot of Swedish, which was good. I did enjoy it, and I was just worked to be piecing together. I'd hear a word and be like, all right, I don't know what we're talking about, but there's a cat involved, or I don't know, you know, or every now and then I'd be like, oh, we're talking about me, things like that. But I'd get, they'd talk for 15 or 20 minutes in Swedish, and I'd get a one-sentence summary in English, so I did a lot of listening, which was good, but I also enjoyed the time when we were with those who spoke English. It made for easier conversation for me. But yeah, that was really kind of them to take us there. Did see a good bit of wildlife, so a lot of birds. That would be the primary place, and the national animal of Sweden is the moose, and so I was really hoping to see a moose, and Melissa said there is every chance that you will see a moose because they see them a lot. But towards the end of the trip, we were only a few days away, and I had not yet seen a moose, so Melissa took me to a place. It's basically a moose safari. Interestingly, the Swedish word for moose is closer to the English word for elk, so it sounded more like an elk safari, but for moose, it's kind of like a reserve where they have some rescues, and they've now had more moose babies and such, and so it's grown, and they had some fallow deer and what they call red deer, and so we were able to go see that, and I think the moose were very expressive. On the day we visited, I enjoyed sending my family this picture with no people, because this moose safari was like a tractor and a big wagon, and they go out there, and these animals are not very wild. The tour people would get out and feed them with buckets and pet them and talk to us about them and stuff. But the first pictures I sent my family were without any people, and that one that kind of looked like it was stampeding me, so I was trying to get some reactions out of that. And then I liked this. This one was one of the younger females, and she just really enjoyed messing with the other moose. meese, whatever they are. And she was just really funny. She was kind of bobbing. You can see the antler of another one to the left, and she was kind of like bobbing around, kind of like not letting the other moose go by, and I managed to capture it. Kind of looks like she's looking at right at me, so that was fun. And that was them getting in a tussle and the male kind of kicking her. So anyway, but it was it was really neat. I was very happy to see a moose. I could not place having seen a moose otherwise, like even in the States. So it's possible I did when I was younger, maybe sometime in New England, but I can't picture it. So it was on my checklist, and when we were getting close, Melissa was like, all right, let's go to the moose safari so you can see it. Interestingly, there was a lot of Germans there. They had one wagon and tractor for English and Swedish speaking people, so they would do it in Swedish and then in English, just talking about the animals and stuff. And then they had another tractor with a couple of wagons, and it was all German speaking. And so Sweden is where a lot of German people go for their vacations. And so the kind of tourism industry of Sweden is ready with a lot of German translation of things. That was just kind of, that's free and for nothing. That's the real wildlife. This is the kind of wildlife. There were a lot of pets involved in the trip. We watched over some animals, visiting people with animals. My best friend here, Soya, wanted to join me having fika. And the dog up there would be Christian and Yuli's. I can share their names. I'm sure they won't mind. That'd be the other core family in the church. Christian and Yuli's dog, we went to their house. Some other cats we watched. And they had pet parking in a lot of places. Little signs with a handle, because the animals weren't allowed in the stores. And so you could, if you were kind of walking down doing the stores, you could just tether your animal there and go in the store and come out. I thought it was interesting. And on the way, we were able to take a ferry to the island. We were attacked by a horrible sea monster. So there's a whole story there that I won't get into now, but I can share later. And I can show you more pictures of the horrible sea monster and how we were rescued. Okay. Okay, let me get on to the church. So the Baptist church, one of two that Melissa would be familiar with in all of Sweden would be Smålands, which is kind of the regional area of Sweden that Jönköping and Gränna and several other towns are. And so Smålands, Baptist for Småling. If Christian was here, he would say, not quite. But that's, actually you'd say, good try, but not quite. We met I was there 3 Sundays, and they do just meet on Sunday, partially because everyone is very spread out, but they make the most of the days they meet. I think the first Sunday, I texted Dad at the end of the day. I was at church for, I think I said 7 hours, and I think it only went longer each week. So they get together once a week, but they spend a lot of time together in that time. The first week we were in the kind of community room at Melissa's apartments, and so there'd be this bottom picture here. It's also where most of the time Melissa would host her Thursday coffee times in that room, and so that's where we had church. The second week was out at a camping area. Christian and Yuli and their family were camping, and it would be driving all of them up to meet for church, or just me and Melissa going down to meet them. And Christian also said, if we have it here, there will be some of these people that we see every year for camping that will come join us, maybe for church, or if not, like for a meal after and things like that. And so Melissa and I were happy to go down. It was about 2 hours away, but go down there just for the chance to meet more people and kind of extend that. And so that's where the picture, kind of the lake and tree, that was my view at Bible study, was looking out over that lake. So I wasn't complaining at all. It was really pretty. This bottom picture is Melissa's apartment area, so I kind of included that just because that's where they meet sometimes. I'll tell you a funny story of why we were there at the camping area for church. We were sitting around together, and we just sang a cappella that week. Usually Melissa will play the keyboard, but we didn't want to drag it down. We didn't even know if there'd be a place to plug it in and all that. So we sang a cappella, and as we sang, a couple of ducks from the pond came up onto the little deck area. It's kind of a covered, railed-in area, and while we sang, there was just like long wooden tables that we sat at, and while we sang, the ducks just joined, and they quacked behind us, just quack, 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 and just did their waddle all the way around the whole thing and behind us while we sang, and then left. So we added a few in attendance that day with the ducks joining us, and they never came up for any other reason. I genuinely think they were curious about the singing. It just sounded different to them or something, and they never stopped quacking, and that was just kind of funny. So And then one of Christian and Yuli's kids was able to play a special on his horn for us, and so that was nice to have some more music. And then the picture of the gym and the sign is the other place they meet, at a gym right near Christian and Yuli's house. So normally it's like every other week between the community room near Melissa and the gym near Christian and Yuli. That way they kind of take turns driving back and forth, and then there's not really people from either place that would travel to the other. So on the weeks that they have church where Melissa is, there are people from her area that will come to church and join, but that wouldn't drive an hour away to go to church at the gym. And there's people who would go to church where Christian and Yuli live that wouldn't drive to where Melissa is. And so they've kind of, it shares the burden of who's traveling, and it also extends the people they can reach out to, just as more every other week. And then individually, they're reaching out to those people as well. And they had just gotten a sign they had talked about, and then with the Bible club that was coming up, they had gotten that just to hopefully have some people see that maybe as they went by and be curious what that was about. So that's the church. Very small. Mainly the church probably truly would be comprised of Christian Yuli and his family and Melissa, just with other people that they see in decent occurrence. And the week we were at the gym, a young boy, Christian Yuli, lived very nearby, and so a couple of their kids just bicycled over while the rest of the family drove over. And on the way, a neighbor friend of theirs bicycled over with. He just thought they were riding bikes, and they got there, and they opened the gym, and he's like, "Wait, we get to play in the gym because it's at the school." And then they're sort of like, "Yeah, we're having church," and he's like, "What's that?" And so Christian called up his dad and was like, "Hey, your boy's here, and we're just having church, and he wants to stay with the kids." And their dad was like, "Sure, that'd be fine." So he was able to be there, and he is on the spectrum, I guess I can put it that way. And so he was just very excited. It was coming and plunking on the end of the keyboard, or when we sang, was just, you'd never see more joy from a person because he'd never experienced that before, what that was like to sing together. And so he just really, it also meant for some outburst maybe in the singing, but it was just out of excitement, and it was really good to see him. And so we'll definitely be praying that he would be able to keep going with them, and maybe that can extend to his family as well. So that is the Baptist church there in the Smalllands area. No meeting place actually technically in Zhangjiaping now that I think about it, but in that region. I did want to insert some pictures and talk about the Church of Sweden. So Sweden has an official church, right? And so if you go back in history, when Europe was basically deciding, are we going to be Catholic or are we going to be Protestant, they made the choice to be Protestant, but then they made the choice to have everything look and appear like Catholicism. So they didn't want to be under the Catholic Church as such, but a lot of the architecture is very similar to what you might see in Catholic infrastructure. And historically, some of the things that they would do, not everything would maybe in the past, some services might feel more like a Catholic church than Protestant. But if you ever said that to anybody in Sweden and said, "Wow, this reminds me of Catholicism," you might be stoned in the street. So I didn't necessarily say that. But this was, all of these pictures is the main church in Zhangjiaping, so it'd be the largest church in the Smalllands area. Nowadays, they would what did you say if we looked them up, they'd technically be Lutheran? Is that what you were thinking? Lutheran would be like the official religion of the country. And basically in Sweden, they have the Church of Sweden and free churches. So free churches would include the Baptist church, it would include a missions church, it would include Episcopalian, it would include Muslim, it would include Hindu. As far as if you're in the Church of Sweden, everything else is just together. So someone who goes to the Church of Sweden, if you said, "I go to Smalllands Baptist Church," or I think technically translated it'd be like Smalllands Baptist Congregation, they would think they might just think, "Oh, you're with the Muslims or you're with the Hindus." Like, there's not a lot of difference to them because you're not part of the Church of Sweden. The Church of Sweden today is more of a social club than anything else, not getting much Bible. Any Bible they are getting is very picking and choosing. When we went into this church, we were able to visit it and go inside, and as we left, there were some brochures in the back asking for volunteers for people to join the church's float in the Pride Parade coming up in a few weeks, and that's what the Church of Sweden is a social club and accepts everybody, and the message would be God is love, and that's about as far as that would go actually from the Bible. But I did enjoy seeing a lot of the churches and just seeing the history that would have been there. But that is definitely kind of sad. And I think it's about 80% of Sweden would be considered in the Church of Sweden. So that's what they would like associate with. But not very many of those people would be actively going or anything like that. Taxes go towards the Church of Sweden, so it doesn't matter if you go in to give, your money is being given to the Church of Sweden one way or the other, and you also pay a death tax. So if you get buried in Sweden, it will be done through the Church of Sweden. There's not another option. And so if you don't want to be buried by the Church of Sweden, you would literally have to make arrangements to be buried outside of the country, or buried under the cover of dark, I suppose, but and at an unmarked grave. But everyone's buried, so you pay a death tax, which basically you pay all of your life, and that means when you die, you'll get a plot with a headstone. It'll be upkept. All these churches have gardeners. They're beautiful. I mean, walking through the cemeteries, they were probably the prettiest, most kept flowers at every gravestone cemeteries I've ever seen in my life, because there's plenty of money from the taxes to go towards that, and that would give you your plot for so long into death. And then at a certain point, if your family members haven't kept paying the death tax, or you didn't leave money in your will to keep going towards your death tax, your spot will be removed and given to somebody else. And they won't unbury you, but they'll get rid of your headstone and just bury someone right next to you and put a headstone in your spot, and give enough time over and over, there's space, if I may put it that way. But that's kind of the morbid reality of it. And so there were headstones of past family members that Melissa had found before, that when we went back to visit, we found them in the pile instead of the plot, because we just found or actually only one of them, but we assumed the others were there because we could not find them. So that's a bit of a glimpse into the Church of Sweden. I should have switched somewhere here in the middle. We were able to see several, really pretty. I enjoyed the one. We were able to visit, let me think. This one on the corner is the same one as the one across the lake. We were able to go to it, see the cemetery, go inside, and then she said that she's like, it's a great picture spot kind of across the lake, and it really was. So it was very, very beautiful seeing all these churches. The one on the top kind of middle was one of the churches actually both of those two in the corner were both churches on the island of Visingsur, and that we were able to visit, so it was really neat to see all those things for sure. All right, let's talk about some of the projects I was able to help with. These are just things that Melissa had come up with that she asked if I could help her do, and Christian had offered over if I wanted to lead Bible study those 3 weeks. Christian does not feel the call to pastor, but he has, with servant's heart, been willing to lead in the Bible study for the church, so they have that consistently, and so they don't really have sit-down preached messages like this. It's more you gather around, Bible study, and he just leads in that. But he offered for me, and again, it is such a small group that it really does kind of even make more sense, maybe. But he had offered if I wanted to lead that those 3 weeks. The first week, there was someone there who needed translation, so he translated for me. The other 2 weeks, everyone was able to understand English, so I didn't have to have that, or at least all the adults. Yuli, Christian's wife, would take the kids for their class after songs and prayer and all that kind of thing. That was good. It was a new experience by the time I led that first Bible study, I had had translation just talking to people through Melissa. That was the first time I've ever spoken formally at a Bible study. It didn't even feel that formal to be translated, so that was unique. I've watched Dad do it at a church down in Phoenix, and it is just a unique experience to do it for the first time. I was able to correct 1,000 gospel brochures. Now that sounds maybe slightly alarming. I was not correcting what they said. Melissa had sent her, many businesses will close for a certain portion of July when people take vacation. So she had sent to her printer a gospel brochure that she wanted to have ready for both my trip and the larger trip from Oregon, the larger group from Oregon that came after me. And they sent it back, and it wasn't on Melissa's copy. It was somehow an error they made that on one page there was one word missing, an E. So not a huge deal, but she took it to them just to mention it, and they're like, oh, that's our bad, we'll reprint those for you. So they reprinted them for her at no cost, but then they're like, well, we can't do anything with that, so just keep them. So rather than throwing away 1,000 gospel brochures, Melissa bought some Sharpies that matched the color E, and and she sort of gave it to me. She's like, just, when we're sitting around home, whenever you think to, you can just go through and add the E. And so I was able to add the E so basically paying for 1,000, Melissa got 2,000 gospel brochures. paying for 1,000 and the cost of a couple Sharpies. But I was able to add that in, and then we went ahead and used the ones that I had corrected first, and we were able to distribute a few hundred. I kind of lost track. At first I was really going to try to keep track, so I had a good number of how many we were able to do, and that stopped happening. But you can put the brochures in mailboxes in Sweden. Can't do that here in the States, but they'd rather you do that than come disturb them at home. So, or even put it on their door. They just want, because they get advertisements and coupons and everything else in their mailbox. So we could walk through neighborhoods or drive through neighborhoods and put these in. Some of the neighborhoods at the end of a street, they'd have all the mailboxes in one spot. So we'd just pull up and I'd stick my head out the window and just, and we'd go to the next street, which meant we did a lot more houses really than we could have even done walking, or Melissa was like, I wouldn't get this many done by myself because it would be harder to drive up, lean out, put it in, drive. She was like, I feel distracted if I'm doing that, but she would be the driver and she'd pull up the mailboxes, and there was one, we picked the hottest day of the Swedish summer to be one of our distributing flyers day, and so I was like, I'm okay if we just want to drive around, that's okay with me. So she would drive, even if they weren't collected, and we'd just drive up, and I just rode around the neighborhood, kind of sticking my head and arm out the window, so that way we just get to a mailbox and I'd pop it in. But we were able to do that, and then we did a little bit of scouting for where she was going to take the larger group that was coming after me to finish out the rest of those, and as well as ads for their Bible camp. I was able also to buy some supplies for the larger mission trip. Something that my aunt had mentioned to me is that sometimes when a group comes, Melissa's very happy for the help and the Christian fellowship, but it can be a financial strain, feeding or all those kinds of things, that many people. Sounds like the group that was coming after me, they were lining things up to be taking care of themselves a lot too, but was able to help Melissa buy just a larger cooler for the days that they were taking a lunch out to do distributing, and then eat a lunch and then go to Bible club and they were going to be gone all day, or stock up on some drinks for when they were at her apartment, things like that. And so that was a blessing, and that came from your giving, so thank you. We were able to record 5 Felix audiobooks in English. Melissa has written several kids' books that she's also turned into audio dramas for the kids, and they follow a little mouse named Felix, and she goes through the fruits of the Spirit, and she has the written books in Swedish, and she has the audio books in Swedish, where it's just her reading through it without, music and voices and all this kind of stuff, and they have a full audio drama version that they've distributed on tapes or CDs or whatever to the kids. But she had some interest in also having, some people wanted them in English, so she did the written books, and then she wanted them recorded, and she certainly could have recorded them, but she just thought, since I was there, I could help with that, and it could just be another voice added to these things. And so that was fun. We got a lot of laughs. We kind of close all the windows and pull curtains and turn off the fans and things to have it be as much of a good studio as we could, and we had a lot of laughs of me messing up or whatever. I was trying to do, she wanted kind of voices for some of the characters best as I could, and I'd get them mixed up, or I couldn't read all of a sudden. I have to think, our favorite one, if you ever listen to the blooper reel, which I don't think will be released, so please don't ask. There was a time that one of the mice is not having a very good attitude, and it says he murmured miserably. And I would read through to see what was going to happen in the story, but I didn't practice the whole thing out loud necessarily, and kind of go page by page and stop. And I got to that, and I said, he murdered miserably. And Melissa just started dying, and I'm like, what? But, so that was a lot of fun. I'm glad we were able to do that. There's kind of an introductory one, and then we did Love, Joy, Peace, and Christmas one. Yeah, so we were able to get those in. That was fun. And then just helping Melissa in her Thursday fika. Every Thursday she kind of hosts in her apartment area fika time, and that just gives her a chance to meet people, and it's not like sit down for Bible study exactly, but as conversations happen, she gets the chance to talk about her faith a lot and why she's there in Sweden, and then it builds connections with some of those people to have one-on-one fika a different time, and it certainly has led to that. And probably my other biggest project helping Melissa was carrying groceries and other shopping up and down 3 flights of stairs. She said she was not looking forward to me leaving because she would have to start carrying those things up the stairs, but anyway. So just kind of helping as I could. I helped with some cooking. Melissa is, I would say, a great cook based on the things she made, but she does not like to cook. So when I found that out, I said, hey, I can help there. And so I think that was nice. I just kind of made things that maybe she wouldn't get very often, and she made some things that I would not have very often. So I think that was nice to kind of go through that. Okay, so those are some of the main projects that I was able to help her with. Here's a picture of me and Melissa. This one's at the elk safari on the wagon. See playing putt-putt. That's probably the best putt-putt view you're ever going to get, looking out from a mountaintop, looking out over the forest. It was a pretty neat place to play putt-putt. And if we really zoomed in, it's going to make it really blurry, but you can see me there. I can show you a better picture sometime on my own. But we were able to go to a rose garden that was beautiful, and you know, some of these things might not be commonly thought of as this is what you do on the missions field, but again, one of my biggest goal was to just be an encouragement to Melissa and be there as a family member. Her sister is the only one who's ever visited her from the family, so there were several things that she's like, I've never been to the rose garden, or I've never been to the elk safari, or these waterfalls, or this or that, and I was like, if you got to go because you wouldn't go by yourself but you're with me, then I will count this as a success for sure. So, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Okay, I have a couple of pictures of flowers. If you don't care about flowers at all, now would be the best time for restroom break, because I'll be a minute. Not really. I don't really have necessarily a lot to say other than I was just flabbergasted basically by how many flowers there were in the variety. It did help that we went to a rose garden. That was some of them, but even just in the wild, it was amazing. And I told Melissa on the first day we went on a hike, or I say hike, a walk by a lake and stuff. And in the first 5 minutes, I stopped to take pictures of several flowers, and I was like, I should just let you know this will be happening the whole trip if you take me to places with flowers. So we both took pictures of flowers, and we'd send some back and forth. So on the picture of the trees, you might think, why is there picture of trees? You can kind of see me at the bottom, and that was to show those were very large trees, just in a park. And I don't know, we live near all these big trees, but somehow those were just these are huge trees. So when we were walking by, I was trying to take a picture. I'm like, you can't tell how big this is. I'm like, Melissa, take a picture. I'm going to run over there so you can see me. But anyway, that's that. And more flowers. Oh, yes. That's how I felt, too. Most of these were at the Rose Garden. It's called the Rosarium, Rose Garden. It wasn't exclusively roses, but there were a lot of different roses and some other flowers as well. There's some berries and such here. I was also surprised. If you see fruit in Sweden, you stop and eat it. I don't feel like you do that around here, but we'd go on a walk and stop at a blueberry bush and get a handful and eat it as we went, or stop by a cherry tree and pick some cherries or whatever berries you found. That was kind of cool, because I don't do that here, so probably smartly. We don't really have the berries we have around here. I don't think you want to eat. So I think one of my favorite moments of just this is really cool is at the base on the island. We went to a castle ruin. We went to a couple, and I have pictures in a minute. We went to the base one, and I kind of walked down to the bottom. It was kind of a rocky shore down into the lake, and I just sat there, and there's a castle ruins from the 1100s behind me, and a cherry tree giving me some shade. And I took off my socks and shoes, and I put my feet in the water, and I just sat there watching the boats eating cherries. And I was like, I've never done this before, so that was really neat. And a few more flowers. The ones with the yellow flowers with the little hearts, those were only found. I saw them several places, and they were always in front of a Church of Sweden. And so I don't know this, but I'm wondering if that's the only place they're allowed. If there was some type of crossbreed that was made for the church or something like that, because I saw them in front of several churches, in planters, but I never saw them anywhere else, not in any garden, not anywhere else. So those were all. The little picture looks like a tree of flowers. Downtown in Jönköping, they were metal structures that made it look like a tree, and then they would just have these big flower bushes out of it, so it made it look like a tree, and those were really neat, very purple, which I loved as well. So, okay, I have more flower pictures, but I thought I would spare you. I can show more later. Some pictures of lakes, and these are several of them. That one kind of dead center, that is the main lake, as well as this one over here, and one on the top. But we saw many lakes. At a certain point, I didn't actually even get pictures of every lake, because it was almost like, oh, another lake, which that tells you how many lakes there were for an Arizona boy to be thinking that. But And then we did get to go see some ruins, 3 castle ruins, all nearby. 2 of them were on the island, 1 just off of it. They were all relatively same era of like 11 to 1200s, but that was really neat. A couple of them you could go hiking into. This picture here, you can kind of see it's like right on the end, so you have the lake literally surrounding it. And really small, you can see Melissa and another friend that we were with there. But it was really neat. This small picture here on the bottom, I should have actually made that bigger. That was the foundation of an old church that was from northern Sweden that was brought down in the 1910s, I think. The whole church, wooden church, was moved and put there in that spot in Jönköping. It was like a historical building, and they wanted to more like museum-ize it there in the city park. And then in the 40s or 50s, it actually burned down. And so they still have the foundation of it there, but it was kind of sad. They managed to move an entire massive wooden structure all the way from northern Sweden down to Jönköping to like 40 years later having it burned down was kind of tragic, but anyway. And then this stone over here is a Viking ruin stone, which is basically like, it's not where the Viking was buried because likely they never recovered his body or had to bury him at sea, but then at home they kind of put the stone up, and so it basically, they had a translation, and it basically was like, here lies so-and-so, son of so-and-so, a Viking warrior, you know. I was like, well, what do you know, right there in front of me. And it was just off on the side of the road. You kind of park on the side of the road in front of these people's houses and take a few steps down, and there it was, so it was kind of interesting. I ate well. So I really enjoyed fika. It was a lot of coffee, but I did enjoy fika. Enjoyed trying a lot of foods. I didn't put pictures of what I cooked because I tried to make like Southwest food because Melissa wouldn't get that very often. They don't really get that. The top picture is a picture of the gluten-free aisle. It was very easy to be gluten-free in Sweden. I kind of want to go back. But like it stopped being let's find a restaurant that has gluten-free. It was, you want to try this place? And we get there and say, I'll have the gluten-free. Everywhere had it. I could eat at Circle K, which I wouldn't even consider doing in America, but I had a hot dog at Circle K because they actually had gluten-free and like handled it properly. That's what Sweden is. And in the grocery store to have an entire aisle of gluten-free was exciting. Swedish pizza, you can get, pepperoni pizza or whatever, but she told me, she's like, if you really want the Swedish experience, she said that several times, I think to tell me you should eat this. It's basically like kebab meat and kebab sauce, French fries, and lettuce. And it was surprisingly good. I was like, okay, Melissa, I'll trust you. And then when I had it, I was like, this is very good. Meatballs and beet salad. The way you can't, some places you can get hot dogs with the bun, but more often you're going to get your hot dog, or they call it korv, on mashed potatoes. So mashed potatoes, korv, ketchup, mustard, relish, fried onions. That's how you eat that. Several pictures of some fast food places we tried, Swedish meatballs, several fika. There's the blueberries. I included the Doritos. I didn't actually ever have any, but I saw them in the store. They don't call Doritos in Sweden Cool Ranch flavor. They're Cool American flavor. So I should have tried them to know what we taste like, but Melissa was like, it's this. She said it's the same thing, but they call it Cool American. And I was like, well, yes, we are. You can barely see it in the picture with like the little salad and the ranch and stuff. There's something called Oostkaka, which was literally on my checklist of things to try. That's kind of gone down in the family history. It was very rich, and it was interesting, but I'm very glad I tried it. It's kind of a cheese, when I say cheesecake, do not even for a second think cheesecake. Like cheese, but you eat it like a cake, but a very rich, hearty cheese. I don't know how to describe it, but anyway. Several places. The random ice cream cone, because that doesn't exist in America, for like a prepackaged little Klondike type, or I don't even know what you call that. Yes, drumstick type ice cream cone, that doesn't exist in America. And we were with some retired missionaries that I'll get back to in a second, that he just whipped them out. He's like, I have these gluten-free ice creams. I'm like, we'll help break those out. Okay, and then here I get to kind of a pinnacle of things. This was my great-grandfather's home that he grew up in. We were able to one day go out. We were planning to go out ourselves, and Melissa remembered that some of her neighbors have a summer home in the area. So she asked them, she said, hey, we're coming to your area, to your family home, like, would it be all right if we stop by and we get a fika? And they were like, sure. And these people had been, didn't spend all their lives in the missions field, certainly, but had spent probably 10 on the mission field and are now retired both from that and from work. And so the bottom picture is actually their summer home on the lake that we went to. And we were able to have fika with them and hear lots of stories. And then they were like, hey, if you're going out here, can we just drive you out there? And we're like, sure. So we went out to the family home. So that's the red home and the sign of the town. And that headstone is not from any family member, but it was from the cemetery of that town where my family, my great-grandfather's brother and 2 sisters were buried. I'm actually now blanking on his brother's name who stayed. He had another brother who came with him. His sisters' names were Elsa and Anna, and that's not a joke. But none of them had kids. So Elsa, Anna, or that brother, none of them had kids. And so our branch of the Carlson family did not keep going in, or actually I think into 1 generation from the brother, actually now that I think about it. And then he did not have any kids. So there aren't any of our Carlsons in Sweden anymore without being like, going back to 8th cousins or whatever. But that was really neat to go out there and see that. And it's kind of used as a rental property now, kind of like an Airbnb, but sometimes long-term. So we saw some things out drying on the front porch, so we knew someone was staying there. Melissa went and knocked just so she could tell people why we were standing in the yard, or see. She was like, if they're agreeable, and we might can just peek inside, but there was no one home, so we just saw the outside. But that was still really neat to see that, really kind to those people as well. And then they actually later took us out to lunch. And I actually wanted to stop and share some stories from them, because when I heard them, I was just like, this feels made up. So this couple, they had both grown up in Sweden. And later, I didn't even get a real clear story on how they had met and got married and all that. But shortly after they were married, they went to live with, I think it was his sister. They were starting out, they didn't have a lot of money, they didn't really have a place to live. This family home, her mother was still living in, and it's a small house there on the lake, so they couldn't really live there. So they went to live with I think it was his sister. Keep in mind, most of this was translated. A little bit of it he would give in English, in kind of broken English, so some of the details are fuzzy, but some of them were pretty clear. And there was one day that a priest, or whatever they're actually called, from the Church of Sweden, was looking for a man who shared this man's name. A different person, but they had the first name and last name. And he was looking for them because God had given this priest a message of what this person was supposed to do. Okay, take that for what you will. But he's trying to look this person up, and he found, instead of the person he was actually looking for, he found the man that Melissa and I were there having fika with, and he finally found him, and he called him up, and he said, God has given a message for you. And this man is sort of like, oh, really? And he said, well, why don't you come share it? And so he told him where they were staying, and the priest came there. And basically the message was like, you are to sacrifice everything, give up everything you know, and serve in the ministry. And this man looked at the priest and said, are you sure that's not a message for you? And he said, have you ever considered that what you're doing might not actually be God's will? Because this man knew that the Church of Sweden was not where it's at, okay? And so he challenged him, and that priest wound up actually moving to England and becoming a missionary, like converted, and became a missionary in England. And so he kind of threw that message back at him. But even just hearing that, he began thinking, maybe I should. And he talked to his wife, and they wound up serving several years in both Kenya, and then as well in what is now Myanmar. It was Burma then. And they served time in both places, including in Kenya. While he was there, there was his wife didn't go to as many villages. She was kind of at a central place, and she did a lot of the coordinating of these trips. So if people were there for short term or long term, and this group of people, they're going to take these supplies, because they'd often be bringing food and clothes and other things to a lot of villages, and then sharing the gospel. And so she did a lot of the coordinating. So she didn't get to see this happen. But there was one time that while he was in a village, that there was a man who was lame, who couldn't walk, and he received Christ, and afterwards he actually regained his health, and God allowed him to walk, and that was really neat. And I'll kind of come back to, it reminded me of a couple of biblical stories, really, but one of them that I've been thinking about. And so they served in both of those places for a while, and then they came back, and they worked. I don't know what all they worked in. It sounds like they weren't in any one thing super long, but one of the things he just worked on his own is he did a lot of Bible tapes. And I didn't quite catch if that was just like recording Bible, like just reading it or like preaching, but either way, he worked on these Bible tapes and he distributed them as much as he could. They also a little bit later in life, did some work for the UN. And actually, I don't remember the country that it was, but they were actually able to, I think because they had learned many languages between being in Sweden. They both understood English fine, spoke it kind of broken. They'd been in Kenya, they'd been in Burma, they'd traveled a lot, so they knew a lot of languages, and so they could working with the UN, act as kind of mediator and work things out. Well, they helped work a deal between two countries to solve some kind of conflict. And so because of their work in that through the UN, the King and Queen of Sweden, so my teaser I gave last week, we're coming to that now. The King and Queen of Sweden later invited them to the palace, which in England, the King and Queen are very, like, positional face. They don't have rule, really, like you would see in some countries. That'd be parliament or whatever they call it, like the government. But they're the diplomatic face. They're the face, and it is a long-running family of rulers. But they were able to meet the King and Queen, and they presented this man with, like, basically a medal saying, like, thank you for your work in peace talks for whatever these countries were. And while they were there talking with the King and Queen of Sweden, they were just asking, like, what other things have you done? And they were sharing what they did on the missions field, and he talked about how he had been and was still working with these Bible tapes. And the Queen just stopped, and she was like, I've listened to those. She's like, I've collected those, and the King and I listened to them sometimes in our kind of quiet time together. And she said, those tapes led me to the truth. And the Queen of Sweden had accepted Christ and was saved through the Bible tapes that this man had made. And I'm sitting here on the little chairs on the lake, eating my little ice cream cone, just hearing these stories. And he was able to share a lot in English, or if there was parts that it just was easier for him not to, that one I was getting more translation than normal. I was just like, wow, that's really incredible. And it kind of, I hope it was an encouragement to Melissa, and it was to me, as far as things like Melissa making these Felix stories that she's passing out, and you never know what kid is going to get the story about a mouse who has a bad attitude and learns about the love of Jesus, and every single one has the gospel in it that could later be a senator or this or that in Sweden. And so it can seem like little things, and I'm sure when he was recording Bible tapes, he wanted it to be a help to people, but he probably never expected it to reach the Queen of Sweden and to ever meet her one day and have her share that's what led her to the Lord. So that story had not a lot to do with me and Melissa, other than we got to hear it, and that was really special. So that day was very special because I sat for several hours with them hearing these types of stories, and then we were able to go out to our family home, and that was definitely special for sure. And we went to the church and the cemetery where they would have been buried. Again, there's not family left of that branch of Carlson, so their death tax went as far as it went, and so their spots have been removed. When Melissa took a survey trip, she had gone here, and they were able to find, like, way before she moved to Sweden, she had taken a picture of them, so she went back to find those, and we tried to find them and couldn't. We found my great-grandpa's brothers just in the pile, and so we're like, I think the two sisters are probably there too, but that was just special to be there. Kind of go back to just kind of, you can spiral into thoughts, but I was just kind of standing there in front of the house thinking, I bet my great-grandfather never thought, like when he was a little boy running around here, never thought one day I'm going to move to America, and a couple generations later, one of my great-grandchildren's going to be a missionary, and another's going to come visit, and they're going to be staying in front of my house. I mean, why would you ever really think those things necessarily? But it was just neat being back there of like, you had just been playing out here, and then as he grew up working on the farm and living here, and so that was really neat to see those things. Based on that story, I did want to share something if you want to take your Bible quickly and go to Luke chapter 8. I won't be long here. I've used plenty of time talking about these things, but in Luke chapter 8, the story of the man who received Christ in Kenya that the missionary told us about, and then later God healed him, it reminded me of a few stories in which God pointed out of people he healed where he also talked about their faith. And one of those people that came to mind was the woman with the problem with blood disease. And so I'll read just a couple verses starting in verse 43. It says, And a woman having an issue of blood 12 years, which had spent all her living upon physicians, neither could be healed of any, came behind him and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her issue of blood stanched. She was healed. And Jesus said, "Who touched me?" When all denied, Peter and they that were with him said, "Master, the multitude throng thee and press thee, and sayest, Who touched me? And Jesus said, Somebody hath touched me, for I perceive that virtue is gone out of me. And when the woman saw that she was not hid, she came trembling, and falling down before him, she declared unto him before all the people for what cause she had touched him, and how she was healed immediately. And he said unto her, Daughter, be of good comfort, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace. And obviously this woman was looking to be healed from a physical issue, as many people in the world would be, but she first had faith in Jesus Christ. She didn't reach out in some kind of hocus pocus, hoping for some spell to be cast on her to be healed, but she reached out because somewhere along the line she'd heard of this Jesus and what he had done, and she believed in him, and that's why she was both made whole, and why Jesus said that her faith hath made thee whole. She had faith before healing. There are some, maybe branches of religion or groups of people that perform healings and do all these kinds of things that may be more for show or don't actually lead people to the truth, and that's not what the gospel of Jesus Christ is about. But when you hear a story like this missionary told us of somebody who was saved and later God gave him healing, it just kind of points you back to the idea of that the faith in a believer is the most important thing. Obviously, I'm sure it was very exciting for the man in Kenya to be healed and to be able to walk. Of course it was. Or for any way in which God blesses us is amazing, exciting, and we should be thankful for those things. But it is faith in Jesus Christ that needs to come first in a believer's life, rather than going about preaching like the Church of Sweden might, preaching, be a good person and God will bless you, and God is love, so love everybody equally and be tolerant of all things, and God will love you for that. Instead of going and teaching that kind of health and wealth mindset and God will bless, we should be preaching the gospel. And even in some of the small things, this woman, it probably was a struggle to get through the crowd to get to Jesus, but she just reached out and touched the garment of Jesus, thinking to herself, I believe in this person so much that if I just touch his garment, I'm going to be healed. And she was right. And so it kind of made me think of that just reaching out idea, which I think is how I would characterize Melissa's ministry in Sweden, as well as one of reaching out to people. It wouldn't be well accepted, and it would probably more turn people away and hinder her ministry for her to walk to downtown Jönköping and start preaching. And even in the church, to just bang on everybody's door and say, you should come to Smålands Baptist Församling, however you say it, Baptist Church, you should come here instead of the church in Sweden. And the Church of Sweden isn't teaching the right things, but she reaches out to people. And she's in the city band, where she meets people in the band as well as places where they play. And she has fika many times a day with friends and neighbors that she's having these conversations with slowly to build a relationship with them, to be able to, she's already shared with many of them what she believes, and to just continue to encourage them towards that. And she's helping in the church with kids ministry and Bible camp and playing the piano and really organizing the music for them there, and doing a lot of brochure handing outing, and even back to when she had Riley, her dog, who's gone now, but when she had Riley, just take him for walks and meet people in the park who had a dog, and because they both had dogs, she'd meet somebody. And while I was there were new neighbors in the apartment right below that she had just barely met, and the woman came up one day with strawberries they had picked. They had been out in the woods and they picked some strawberries, and so she brought them by, and Melissa was like, that doesn't happen often for someone that new to the area to reach out to me that quickly. So she's like, I'm gonna order, they had just had a baby, she's like, I'm ordering a baby gift, and it got there in 2 days on Amazon. And she's like, honestly, this might be a better thing for me to just go do. And I'm like, that's okay, I can work on brochures or something. And she went down to meet them and give them the baby gift and just start those relationships and that reaching out in her faith, Melissa, and that's what we're supporting. And so I just wanted to share that with you, because that's what we're giving towards Melissa being able to be there to see people saved through the slow and steady, because that's the way to reach the people in Sweden, is building relationships with them and going over to their house once a week to do their vacuuming because they're unable to health-wise. Or the very first day I was there, I built a neighbor's cat tower, and help other people. They buy a piece of furniture, help carry it up the stairs for them. That's what Melissa's ministry is doing. Many things, writing these Felix stories, all of that, it all goes together, but it's little by little building relationships with people. And that's what I saw, and that's what I will be able to think of when I think of Melissa's ministry. And so I hope kind of sharing that with you gives you a good idea of, it's more than we would get from a letter, I think, with some pictures, but there are people that I'll be thinking of that either we know aren't saved, or just maybe there's not assurance on Melissa's part because there's a lot of knowledge, but she just doesn't know if they've made that decision. And I'll be able to picture faces and names of people when we get letters. When she gives an initial, I'll be like, I know who that is, and I'll know better how to pray. And I know not all of you got the same experience, but I hope just in getting to see that you'll see her ministry through my time there, and just really be praying for Melissa. It is a peopled ministry. There were times that I was like, if I let myself think about it too much, I'm going to feel really peopled out, especially when I can't even understand what's being said. In a lot of these situations, Melissa's just with people all the time. And the band, I didn't even experience the band part of her life because they usually kind of break for July because so many people are on vacation. So that's another area where she's just with people constantly and being ready to have those moments and serve them coffee to win them to the Lord. So tonight when we go to prayer time, we should definitely pray for Melissa. We haven't had a newsletter right now, but we've now definitely heard a lot. So please pray for Melissa and just her ministry there, as well as the things that were mentioned. After that, we will go to Fika, which is why you all really came tonight. Fika translated means to have coffee. So I've said it before. If you don't have coffee tonight, you can't ever say, I've had Swedish Fika, okay? So you have to try it. And when you go out there, you'll say, you forgot to set out the cream and sugar. No, I didn't. You don't drink it with cream and sugar. But if you would like, there is some by the normal coffee place. So if that's the only way you're going to be able to get coffee in you, you can get some. But I'm not putting it on the table. So there's some candies there that I brought from Sweden, some cookies, and like a fruit drink also for both to try. And then I also understand that some of the kids and such aren't going to be too behind the coffee, so they can try a Swedish drink still. But we'll go to that. And we had Fika a lot, which basically is a time to have coffee, and you'll have some type of cookie or a small cake or something like that, and then just spend a lot of time together is the idea of Fika. And Melissa uses that well, I think, to her ministry to just build relationships with people, but we can go enjoy that in a few minutes. So before that, we will go and have regular prayer time. So unless if you have anything else to add for now, we can go ahead and go to our regular prayer time, and then when Pastor sees that everybody is kind of done, he'll come up and dismiss for Fika. Maybe if you can pray at that time, that would be great. Thank you so much.